Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I'm going to discuss the methodology which is at the heart of this course, which is differentiates this course from all other macro courses currently being taught around the world. One of the key ideas that we are using, that I have used to develop this course, is something I've called entanglement in another context. And this is the mutual dependence of theories and history. So basically, theories about social science theories, all social science theories are designed to understand your experience, the social experience. So economics was designed, was developed in the Britain, and it was developed. The theory was developed to understand what was going on in Britain at that time, how capitalist system was working, and it abstracts from the particular nuts and bolts. So it's basically, and you have to think of the forest and the trees. So you look at the trees, and then you have the forest, and the forest is the collection of all the trees. So you have a macro picture, but the macro picture depends on the micro picture. It's not that you have this universal description of forest and it will apply to everything everywhere. It is tied. So there is a relationship between the theory and the historical experience. And what I am saying here is that the theory cannot be understood without its historical context. And this is explicitly denied by conventional macroeconomic methodology. They say that no, the theory is scientific theory. It is valid without regard to history, without regard to context. So once you have macroeconomic theory, you have the differential equations of Romer. They apply to Pakistan, they apply to India, they apply to Brazil, they apply in 19th century and in 21st century. This is wrong. So when I say that we want to understand Keynesian macroeconomics, then we have to study the Great Depression. Otherwise, because that's what it was designed to understand. Now, it may apply to other situations, but that is something that needs to be determined, and we cannot understand the theory without its historical context. So, the emergence of capitalism, economic theory, actually Polanyi's book, The Great Transformation, it describes how economic theory emerged out of trying to understand the structures, the changes that were taking place in economies in the England at that time. So one of the major changes was move from the traditional society to market society. This involved changing the market structures, but also the social structures and the political structures and the thought structures, the ways of thinking. The idea that men are for sale in the market, this became acceptable when the market society emerged, and it was not acceptable before the market society. So the idea that I can sell some of my time in the labor market, this was not part of the society. Actually, in the traditional society, you did work for a living, but you owned what you worked for. So you felt happy that I am producing something which is of value to society. But in the market society, you don't own the product. You are a factory worker. You are working for the money that you receive. The output does not belong to you. So in the sense of a psychological sense of ownership, the owner hired you to work for him, and you are receiving the pay, and that's your transaction. You are not responsible for the product. If you are not there, you would be replaced by some other part. So in some sense, the fact that the factory is producing something that is valuable is not relevant to you. And this actually was realized by Karl Marx. He called it anomie, alienation. The worker is now alienated from his product in the market. Previously, the worker felt that his life was meaningful because he was doing something valuable for the society. But now in the market system, the worker is doing something meaningless. He is working just to earn money to feed his family, and the time he is spending is not socially valuable or productive. So um, in this move from traditional society to market society, thought structures change. And one of the key thoughts in a traditional society is the social responsibility. We are all responsible for all members of the society. So if somebody is hungry, then we are collectively responsible to make sure that he eats. But this thought was abandoned, and the philosophy of individualism emerged. Everybody is responsible only for himself, and if everybody is starving, that's not my problem. So philosophies emerged to shift the blame. So poverty was previously considered a social problem, everybody's problem. Then Malthus came up with this theory that the poor are to blame for it themselves, and the same thing continues till today. The battle is being fought at the ideological front. Some people say that the poor are responsible because they are not educated, because they don't have job skills, so it's their job to educate themselves and to get the job skills so that they can get jobs. And the social thought is that whatever the cause is, we are responsible to take care of it, and the poverty can be an outcome of the system itself. The system itself is designed to generate poverty, so they are not responsible. So understanding this, which is true, requires understanding the causal mechanism. What is it that creates poverty? So there is some positive aspect to it, but very importantly, and this is again methodology, the theory that emerges will not be the true theory. Different groups will have different theories. It may be that none of the theories is true, but different theories will be aligned with the interests of different parties, and the theory which emerges will be reflect the power of the hegemon, the interests of the powerful. But one more thing that is very important to understand here, Karl Marx said this very explicitly. He said that the advance of capitalist production depends on developing a working class which by education, tradition and habit looks upon the requirements as self-evident natural laws. So basically the workers think that this is the only system, there is no other way, and that we are getting the marginal product of labor and this is what we deserve. So the system works by their consent, by feeding them theories about what is true. It makes them believe that this is the only way that the world can work. So even today in the USA, even though right next to the USA you have a system of social medicine which is far more efficient, far more advanced, everybody gets access to free health care, but the US public believes that socialized medicine is very bad and wrong and harmful, and they are even in the global financial crisis. Right after that, there were some proposals that we should bail out the mortgagers instead of the criminal financial institutions which had caused the crisis, and that would have been much cheaper and much more safe. So there were advertisements that were placed in newspapers. Do you want to bail out so and so who irresponsibly took a higher mortgage? Of course not. You don't want to. Somebody, some person was very irresponsible and he took a loan which he couldn't pay back. Now you are going to bail him out? That was made to be. So the public mind was created that we shouldn't do that, even though that was the right move. So in fact, the administration which came in, I think it might have been Obama. I don't know who was Obama. Was the one? Yeah. So they considered I think it's written in House of Debt that they considered these moves and they assessed the public sentiment and they said no one will go for it. So they didn't take those moves, even though bailing out the banks was actually a criminal move. But that is what was done because the public sentiment was manipulated to be in favor. So the theories which dominate are the theories which serve the interests of the powerful class, but also very importantly, the powerful class does not impose its desired policy by force. It imposes its desired policy by propagating a theory which makes other people believe that this is the best policy. So this is why we see the dominance of false theories all over the world, because these false theories serve the interests of the rich, and nobody has enough power to enforce this by the gun. So they have to be enforced by the use of the mind. And so that is why brainwashing on a large scale is necessary, to keep people blind to their real interests and to make them favor the interests of the ruling classes. So another implication of this, which is very important to understand, is that how we respond to situations. So now we have a deficit, we have capital current account imbalance. So what are we going to do? Well, we just raise the interest rates, and we are trying to put taxes on imports, and we are trying to do this, that, and there. What are we doing? All of these actions are dictated by a theory about how the world works. So the theories, whether they are right or whether they are wrong, they shape history, because the actions we take will determine what happens in the future. If we did something else would happen. So this is what I call entanglement. You cannot understand theories without understanding the historical context in which they are born, but also you cannot understand history without understanding the theories which are dominant, because these theories are used to determine the policy responses, which in turn shapes history. So that's why history and theory are entangled. They are mixed up with each other. So now the dominant understanding of what a theory is, which is understood by economists in all other classes that are being taught, is different from what I am teaching you. Basically, according to the dominant understanding, a theory is a collection of axioms which abstracts from reality, and then the deductions of the theory follow from the axioms, and the goal of the theory is to provide correct deductions. Now, does it apply to reality? That's a peripheral question. Every theory is valid because it starts on axioms and it derives conclusions. Some theories are more applicable, some are less applicable. All theories are false. This is admitted and understood, and it is taken to be irrelevant. That okay, we develop one theory. If it doesn't fit, then we develop another type of theory. But basically, theory is axioms and deductions from these axioms. But this is the wrong understanding of theories. Actually, what we do is we look at reality itself to derive a model, and we strip away all elements which we think are unimportant, and we simplify and we abstract and we make a very simple model, but the model is coming solidly from the reality. This is different. This is how it used to be before some changes in methodology of economics, especially Friedman's idea of the as if. This caused delinking. Friedman said that we don't have to link the axioms to the reality. The axioms need not be linked. In fact, the more absurd the axioms are, the better your theory. So this was a really bad move, but this became widely accepted. And that basically unchained economics from any connection to reality. The axioms don't need to connect to reality. The outcomes don't need to connect to reality. So what is the connection to the reality? You take the theory and you see whether or not it applies. If it doesn't apply, make a better theory. But all the theories are subject to certain rules which have to be followed, which rules are actually very arbitrary and nonsensical. Basically, maximization and equilibrium are the two rules. If your theory has maximization and equilibrium, then it's a good theory, regardless of whether or not it applies. That's the conventional methodology of economics. So now the reality is that we take the reality, we simplify it, and then we work with the model. We try to play with the models. That's what I've been asking you to do. Take your toy model and play with it, and see if the results match what we see in the real world. If they do, then our model has some explanatory strength. If they don't, then we add some more complication to the model to try to get a better match, so that we can pick out. When we get a match, we see that, okay, our model can replicate this phenomena in reality, so it has some chance of being true. So that's how models work. So once you understand this, then you look, we have been studying the real world. We have been studying how the global financial crisis occurred, how the Great Depression occurred, how banking works, how finance works. So we can ask this question that, look, in this process, can a differential equation help us understand this process? So it's almost obvious intuitively that it cannot. I mean, the processes that we are looking at are so complex that simple mathematics cannot describe them. And this is really true. So it's not that models are not helpful, it's that we need very complicated models. And the complicated models are the agent-based models. These agent-based models can capture very complex things, but we cannot compute what will happen. But that's no problem. We let the computer compute what will happen. We give rules. Okay, this is how financial institutions behave. We have 10 of them, and we give them money, and we put in other agents who are borrowers, and we have rules for the behavior, and we can program those rules, and we say, okay, go. Let the computer calculate what will happen. So that's what an agent-based model is, and that can be done. Now, when the economists don't have, economists say that, no, we're not going to let the computer, we're going to do it by hand. Then they say, okay, in our model there will be only one agent, because that's all we can calculate. If I put in two agents, then the calculations become too complex. And that's why modern economics is a complete failure. And that is why this alternative approach that I am teaching to you in micro is the agent-based models. Once you understand this, this is the basis of a completely new and different way to do economics. So basically, you need to understand the trees, and that's what the raw data that comes from looking at what's really happening. This is something which the economists don't do, because they start with the axioms, which are supposedly abstracting from the reality. We could do that, and we have done that, in fact, in this course. But the axioms that they take, like utility maximization, like profit maximization, like many other things that are part of they have no relation to the ground reality, and people realize that. I mean, there's Olivier Blanchard who says that the DSG models, the assumptions that we make are not just wrong, they are just diametrically opposed to everything we know about reality. So that's why those models are very bad. Now, in order to do modeling correctly, you have to have an understanding of reality, and that's what you get by looking at the tree-level details, by looking at this book by on the savings and loan, Pizzo, Fricker, and Molo, and the other books. They give you the trees. That's not enough. Understanding history is not enough. When you have history is just a sequence of events. Why did this sequence of events happen? This will always involve a theory. It will involve some reality. It will involve some hidden reality. This is what logical positivism denies. It says don't go beyond what you can see. But if you don't go beyond what you can see, then you are dead. Then you cannot discover. So your theory is a hypothesis about the hidden reality which drives the history. And this hypothesis you can never verify. That's the correct thing. The logical positivists say that you can never verify the hidden reality. This is true. So they say that abandon thinking about the hidden reality. This is false. Now, for example, to illustrate why, you see, what is your name? Nauman. See, Nauman has some feelings at this point. He is either confused or he is clear. This is the hidden reality. This I can never find out. I can ask him, are you confused? And he can say yes, but still I will not know whether or not the hidden reality is completely beyond my reach. So positivism says that forget about it. Don't think about it. So I say that no, even though I don't know and I can never find out, still I must make a guess and because my teaching will depend, if all the class is completely confused, then something is wrong with what I'm saying. But if most of the people got it and Noman is confused, then I will ask that other people to explain it to him instead of wasting my time repeating myself. So my action depends on the hidden reality, what I do, and I can't say that no, if the reality is hidden, if I can never find out, then just don't think about it. If I do that, then I lose access to. So this is exactly the problem, that economics and the methodology of science currently says that don't think about things which you can never find out about. But actually, most of the things in our lives, like the feelings of other people, are things we can never find out for sure about, but still we operate on the basis of guesses about that. So exactly like that, when we look at events, we have to make some guesses as to how they happen. We will never be sure whether or not our guess is true. But contrary to current methodology, which says that if you cannot be sure, just don't think about it, we have to use guesses, and these guesses we can confirm to some extent by looking at whether or not they work, but we will never be sure, but still we must use the guesses about the reality. Okay, so that's the basic important methodological point. I have a lecture on models and reality which you can look at to get more information about this.